Hello friends of Powerhouse Bakery. My name is Suzanne Parker and I'm the owner and founder of Powerhouse Bakery. I'm so glad you're here today, and I want to go over some really fun, well, I think fun, information about carbohydrates. Right now they kind of have a bad reputation, I think, in the nutrition world among a lot of folks. We really have sort of an interesting time because so many people are looking for what is healthy. And somehow carbohydrates kind of go in and out of fashion. We have people that are trying to follow a very low carbohydrate diet with a keto or paleo style of eating, because honestly I feel that they've been misinformed about what carbohydrates really are and how they can be part of an absolutely healthy diet. When we look at carbohydrates over the ages, we've seen that they've really run through lots of changes. We know that sugars in general fall into the same category of carbohydrates, as well as the whites. You've heard that the whites are what you need to stay away from. And what I want to share with you today is how do we take the carbohydrates that we include in our diet from good to great? How do we really understand how to make the carbohydrates in our diet the very best we can? So whether you're trying to follow a lower carb diet, or you're trying to go vegan, or you're trying to stay away from all carbs, really, they need to be a part of our healthy diet. Even if you're following a very low carbohydrate diet, in order to have your body function optimally, we do want some. So let's get started. When we talk about going from good to great, first I want us to navigate the grocery aisles. If we think of the store that's set up with maybe the produce on one edge, and we've got the dairy, and maybe the meats. Oftentimes you'll hear that you should shop the perimeter of the store. And I say that, sure, that's not a bad idea, but look at all we're missing on the inside. In the inside aisles, we are getting things like grains and beans. We're getting all kinds of oats and oat products. We're getting dried fruits. And so there's plenty of reasons to fall inside the aisles of the store. Produce is certainly going to give us an opportunity to go from good to great. We know that in general, anything in the produce area is going to be a great choice. We can take any meal from good to great just by adding some produce to that meal. Not only is it going to give us some excellent ways to get vitamins and micronutrients and all the phytochemicals that are in those bright colors, it's going to give us wonderful crunch factor. It's going to give us the opportunity for sweet, fresh, and lots of ways to add interest and intrigue to a meal, taking it from good to great. We can go to the dairy aisle, and while there is some confusion about whether or not animal products or cow milk or dairy is a good choice for people, ultimately we have lots of choices. And so your own digestive tract and your own comfort level with adding dairy in or not is really at your disposal. Because in the dairy section, there's a lot of excellent non-dairy items. So now we've got oat milk, and we've had almond milk for quite some time. We've hemp milk and rice milk. All of these are great choices. Now, to take this area from good to great, what would we be looking for? Now, in general, the dairies, if it's not from a cow, it's going to be very low in protein. It's really from a grain or from a nut, and the product has been soaked so that some of the flavor and the starches will seep out of the almonds or the oats or the hemp hearts, and it will flavor the water. So while it's going to be a dairy replacement, I want you to think about what you're giving up when you don't use cow dairy. And again, it might be because it's not good for your diet, or for some reason you and your healthcare professionals have decided not to include dairy. But if you choose to have a non-dairy replacement, just be aware that it's going to be carbohydrates only, maybe even some fats. Taking it from good to great would be including the organic choices and picking ones that have low sugar. So that's going to be the very best way in the dairy section to go from good to great. In the meat section, when or choosing to find carbohydrates, there really isn't very many. And that's because the meats should be minimally processed. We want to avoid any meat products that have breading or somehow they've been pre-seasoned or pre-prepped for you. We want to avoid those options in the meat section. Now, let's talk a little bit about the center. There are so many things that we can look at to take our complex carbohydrates from good to great right there in that center aisle. Here's a couple of examples. When we look at oats, some people have decided that steel cut oats are better than 1 minute oats. And let me explain, that's partially true. The idea is that we do want to have low processing. So if we want to pick low process as part of our requirement from taking a carbohydrate choice from good to great, then what we want to do is find ones that are going to have highest protein and highest fiber and minerals. Steel cut oats do not have any guarantee that they're higher in any of those qualities. Quick oats could also be just fine. The trick is that when we pick low process, we want to make sure that there isn't any sugar added. So if we pick a quick oats, awesome, still a great choice of a complex carbohydrate. If we were to choose the little packets of honey and cinnamon oats, we know that there's going to be added sugars, and that's where we're going in the wrong direction. So in general, looking in the center aisles when you're looking at oats, the trick is to find oats that have nothing in the ingredients other than rolled oats. It doesn't have to mean that they are the steel cut or the thick cut or the old fashioned or the cooks in 1 minute. The trick is to make sure they don't have added sugars. The other thing we want to look at is our volume. Remember, I'm always talking about serving size is key. So taking a serving size of oats from good to great could absolutely mean not looking at the portion that is being told to us on the label or the nutrition facts, but instead listening to your own body and making sure the portion is right for you. And maybe even adding balance. So portion can take any carbohydrate from good to great by making sure that the portion is correct for you. And then also, if we think of adding in extra goodies, so you could add nutrients and not sugars. Add nuts and perhaps your dairy or your dairy replacement, but no sugars. Absolutely key. Let's go a little farther into those aisles. Again, we're looking at how to make a carbohydrate that's already complex, so minimally processed, make it even more nutritious. Here's some fabulous dried prunes. We use these a lot in Powerhouse Bakery. How can we make something as simple as a dried fruit go from good to great? This is really important because so often we want to convince our kids and our family members to enjoy a healthy treat. And if it's something that's right out of the container, albeit it might be somewhat boring and it might not have enough flavor. So taking a dried fruit from good to great, again, will be all about the company that it keeps. So keep great company. And so what I mean by that is, if we're trying to increase the nutrition quality of our carbohydrates, maybe adding in some other flavors. We could add in spices, we could find some fun new recipes that are going to give us not only oats, but maybe some fruits and nuts to go with it. So again, doing some creative combining are going to really give us some options for our carbohydrates to be excellent choices. Not to mention the portion sizes are always going to be important. And again, don't feel like you have to look at the the nutrition facts to guide us on those dried fruits. A little goes a long way, and then adding more flavor with the spices that you add is a great approach. Okay, let's go a little bit farther. When we think of unusual and fun new things, I pulled out this from our pantry here at Firehouse Bakery. Amaranth is a traditional grain of Mexico. It's a very interesting way to get some complex carbohydrates. It says right on the front of the pack, discover the whole grain goodness of amaranth, a staple food of the ancient Aztecs. It contains all the essential amino acids, including lysine, which is lacking in most grains. So I bring this up because it's giving us a lot of great information on the front of the pack. Oftentimes people think that eating healthy is expensive. It doesn't have to be. This is a very simple processed grain. We've just harvested it, and it's been dried, and it gives us some great information on the front of the pack. If we turn this into a potato chip, now the processing has gone way up, as well as the marketing and the packaging. So all of that increases the price. So make sure that when you're looking for carbohydrates, keeping it simple means keeping the price down low. And don't let anybody tell you that increasing the quality of your diet has to be expensive. Simple grains that are sometimes unique and maybe unfamiliar to you almost always come with some fun recipes on the back. So don't be afraid to experiment with some of the recipes on that label information. Bob's Red Mill is a really good resource. They'll always give us fun information in order to learn how to use some interesting items. If you've been to Powerhouse Bakery, we do a great sorghum salad, and funny that it turned out we accidentally bought a package of sorghum, much like this amaranth, and we learned how to cook it. And then we got really pretty good at using different recipes, and that's something that makes it so much fun. So whether you're thinking about eating carbohydrates in the raw, or boiling, or frying, even baking, all of these are going to add interest and intrigue, and also change the way the body is able to absorb them. Sometimes raw veggies will hold on to some of the nutrients, making it a little bit less easy to absorb, and sometimes cooking the vegetables makes it easier. So what we try to do is have a mix. Get a variety of raw and see if you could experiment with steaming and even boiling and frying. Pan fry is going to give you a very small amount of oil. So when we're thinking about different cooking styles, we want to try to add as little bit as we can into that food, so that when we're using a complex carbohydrate, we want to make sure it's easy to digest, still has all of its protein and vitamins and minerals that the plant intended for, without a lot of fats and sugars that change that nutrition quality. The other thing we want to look at is when we use water to cook, we know that it will sometimes pull some of the nutrients out. So cooking with a small amount of water as well as a small amount of oil is a really great way to go. An interesting tidbit, we're in the midst of viruses really changing the way we do life. And even with the patients that are in the hospitals now struggling with COVID, the most valuable treatments for these people are actually from foods. Vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, which is an important mineral that comes in all of these carbohydrates, are so important in helping build the immune system. So when we find simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, we want to make sure that we're able to maintain the vitamins and the minerals in those foods. And so when we cook vegetables, that's going to help to liberate some of the minerals like zinc and even vitamin D. Be careful though, if you're adding a lot of water or even fats, it does pull down the vitamin C. So eating foods that are lightly cooked and using a small amount of water is definitely the way to go. But vitamin C, D, and zinc are super important, and not a better way to get them than in our complex carbohydrates. And taking them from good to great means cooking them sometimes with a small amount of oil or water, sometimes eating them raw, so that you can really benefit from the fiber and the protein that's naturally occurring in those vitamins, in those plants. So when we look at the black beans, some people are wondering if we can still eat items like this from a can, and I say absolutely. When we look at the ingredients, and number one and the number two ingredient is beans and a little bit of salt. So no sugar has been added, and that means that it's going to be a great complex carbohydrate. We can take it even better if we start adding some spices and some more phytonutrients. And so adding in bright colors like peppers and even some potatoes are going to take this simple can of great beans even greater by adding in all those nutrients. Here's another one, applesauce. Again, we're in the center of the aisle and we're talking about how these carbohydrates can go from good to great. Applesauce, here we've got a pretty good front of pack information here. It's a naturally fat-free food. Select ingredients, whatever that means, HEB. But what I want you to see is here it's showing original. If we look at the ingredients, what else can we glean from this carbohydrate that is in the center of the aisle? Here we've got apples, number 1 ingredient. Oh, number 2 ingredient is sugar. Do apples need to have extra sugar? Definitely not. Apples are a great, simple carbohydrate that are going to digest quickly. So it's going to go into the blood quick. And it's going to give us some fast, fabulous energy, which is good. And it's going to be loaded with vitamin C and other minerals. Of course, and other vitamins. It's going to give us fiber. And while it doesn't give us protein, it gives us lots of hydration. Anytime we eat apples and even applesauce, we're getting great nutrients. The downside is it's adding a lot of sugar. So if we can avoid items in the center aisle that have added sugar, we'll definitely be taking those carbohydrates from good to great. All right, now let's take it a little farther. As we are going through these series, I want you to be able to find ways to make recipes that your family will be excited about. Colin Campbell's Center for Nutrition Studies is a great resource. You can go online and they are always giving out fresh and fun recipes. Here I've got one for vegan pumpkin French toast. What makes this unique? We're still using bread and use a complex carbohydrate if you can. So here's this wonderful bread that I've made here at Powerhouse Bakery. It's got chia seeds, it's got whole grains of amaranth and millet, so a nice complex bread. And then they take it a step further and they have you add in some pumpkin puree. So a great recipe is going to give you ways to layer on your carbohydrates. So great recipes encourage you to layer. So in this particular one, I was really excited about it because it gives you not only your complex carbs, but it's adding in extras. So when you whip up your egg, you're adding pumpkin puree and you're adding spices. So you get soluble fiber, you're getting spices, and it even gives you the green light to add some organic maple syrup. So organic maple syrup is a sugar. But what makes it better is that it's organic, plus whenever it's the way nature made it, we can count on it having more nutrition. And that is the best part. So we can absolutely have sugars the way nature made it and still get some great value from the vitamins and the minerals that are in that maple syrup. Same thing with honey and even with agave. Some people are looking at agave as not as good because of the glycemic index. And that's something that I want to kind of help us go through, because in general, a glycemic index is looking at a food all by itself. How does that one food change your blood sugar? Well, we know that when we have great recipes that layer excellent foods, we are not eating just one food, and most of us are like that. It's rare that we'll eat just one food, just a cup of prunes or 2 or 3 pieces of dried fruit, pretty rare. So the glycemic index is a vague term at best. What I'd rather you think about is overall portion, keeping things in a small portion so that you can get the value from the protein, the complex carbohydrates, and the minerals. These recipes are so fun. Let me show you another one. And again, I just printed these off of the Colin Campbell website. Look at this, green pepper tofu scramble. Fantastic. Here's another one, pancakes that are made with pumpkin puree as well as unsweetened apples, and then putting on that beautiful fruit as a topping. Something that I want us to talk about is that soy can absolutely be a complex carbohydrate. It's great because it is a bean, and the soy bean is unique Here we're making this beautiful tofu scramble, and when you saute it with some veggies, it looks and tastes very similar to scrambled eggs. And because it's a bean, it's going to be rich in fiber and loaded with phytochemicals. So anytime we take a carbohydrate from good to great, that means it's got some of the naturally occurring nutrients that God intended for that plant. And this beautiful plate, not only do we have the tofu scramble that is soybeans, we've also paired it with some rice that has lots of mushrooms and peppers and onions. And then on the side, we even have some toast with some fruit spread. So remember that our meal does not have to be boring or thinking of just one food or two. Look at how many colors and interest and intrigue is in that plate. And so when you're taking your complex carbohydrates from good to great, add in layers of beauty and nutrient quality, and your family will love it. Here's one more. This one is a smoked tempeh bacon. So if you have family members that are learning how to eat more plant-based, sometimes bringing in a food that has a lot of similarities to their old favorites, it allows them to transition gradually, and I think that's a really good thing. This savory plant-based bacon recipe makes a perfect side dish for breakfast. It's chewy, it's got some great subtleties of maple syrup, and it's still all plant-based. So be careful though, because some of the store-bought products that again are on the meat aisle are going to be what we call fake meat. And so they're using ingredients that are sometimes soy-based, but they have a lot of additives and preservatives. So when you're looking for soy-based products, I want you to get still the choices that are taking you from good to great. So you still want to find organic, and you still want to be able to look at the ingredient list to see what is inside. What's inside that ingredient list when you're deciding to go more plant-based, but having some processing that happens with the soy. Anytime we do processing, we have a red flag goes up. So we want to make sure that we're using still really good quality organic ingredients. And if we are using soy, to try to find some more complex carbohydrates in a different form, we can certainly do that. But we have to make sure we know what is in our food. Here's some other ones that I didn't do pictures of, but I know that you're going to be able to find them. We've got avocado toast. We've got chickpea cauliflower quiche. We've got vegan breakfast sausage with apples and shiitakes. Carrot cake oatmeal. How awesome that sounds. So getting excited about your carbohydrates doesn't mean you have to stick with plain old oats with a little bit of raisins and wish you had the brown sugar, but you're trying to be good to leave it out. Adding in organic maple syrup, adding in some great chopped fruits, whether they're dried or fresh, are definitely the way to go to layer your flavors so that your carbohydrates can always be great, getting you the best sorts of nutrients as well as flavor. Because remember, carbohydrates are the stuff of life. They give our bodies the most important nutrient profile, which the way nature made it should be protein, as well as lots of energy, as well as vitamins and minerals. So I hope this helps, and I can't wait to share some recipes with you. So come see us soon at Powerhouse Bakery. I'd love to share some goodies with you. Have a great day, guys.